Base, this is Army Nerd. SP time now, over.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 3 of the Army Nerd. Today we're going to be continuing to talk about Warhammer 40k and how you can introduce friends and colleagues to this great hobby. There's lots of different aspects of the hobby that people find interesting, and really the way to introduce it to someone is you got to start with knowing what kind of person are they. Like, what is something that's going to catch their interest? To me, there's 3 kind of mainstay ways to get people interested. One is the lore. Whether that's the books or some of the new animations that are coming out from either third parties or Games Workshop themselves. Second would be the gameplay. Someone's kind of competitive, is really interested in the tactical aspect of making those decisions and playing through the game. And finally, the modeling hobby aspect of it. Maybe they love the look of some of the models and the miniatures. And we'll do separate videos on each of those. This video is going to focus on the gameplay aspect of it. I've had some success in the past getting people who are now big gamers and really enjoy the hobby. And the way to do it is you want to introduce them without overwhelming them, right? And so what I say is you got to make it easy and challenging. And what I mean by that is you don't want the person to come in and be overwhelmed by the rules. So we're going to go down, I got a list of tips here, and I'll use a scenario that I did in the past using a Necron and Space Marine armies. So first, you can either bring one person in, or the way that I did it was I had 2 people that were interested come in, so they didn't feel overwhelmed by, being the new guy. It was 2 guys that had completely no idea what they were doing, never played a game in their life. They had them come in, so I built both of their armies for them. So the first thing I did was I used a basic mission that highlights the complexity of the game but is not overwhelming. And for this, I took Incisive Attack. It's a patrol mission right out of the main rulebook. It's a very standard deployment. It's got 4 objectives. What you want to do here is you don't want to... Some of the problems I've seen in the past with, let's say, the missions and some of the starter boxes is they're very simple. They're too dumbed down. It's good for introducing the basic rules of the game. You gotta understand how to move and shoot. But what it doesn't do is give the players an idea of some of the tactical challenges that they can get. So as long as the players are familiar with the basic rules of the game, and the way we got around this was we actually sat down, we watched some of the tutorials that Games Workshop put out on the basics of the movement phase and the shooting phase and all of that. And we did a couple of practical exercises to show, like, hey, if you were attacking, this is how you would do it. And just you being there as the experienced player and walking them through when they have any difficulties, I found there was really no need to go through and play a 30-minute game of 2 guys throwing dice with 6 models on the board. You can do a full-size combat patrol-ish kind of game. Keep it small, but when you use one of those basic missions, they're getting that competitive edge in there. They're understanding that you want to hold one objective, you want to hold 2 objectives, and you want to hold more than the opponent's objectives. And what I did to throw another layer of complexity in there was I gave them each the same one secondary objective, which is deploy scramblers out of the tournament mission pack. And so what this gave them was an understanding of, not only can your units move and shoot and fight, but there is another thing that they can do. They can do actions. And so it's introducing the action mechanic. It's keeping it relatively simple, right? You deploy scramblers in your deployment zone, in the middle, and in the opponent's deployment zone. And I actually modified it where, typically deploy scramblers, you get 10 points if you get all 3 locations. I changed it to 5 points per deploy. So it was 5 if you scrambled in your deployment zone, 5 if you scrambled in the center, and 5 if you scrambled in your opponent's deployment zone. And this really, gave them more of an incentives to do this, and kept it from just being a game of, like, I'll stand here, you shoot at me, you stand there, I'll shoot at you. And I found it worked, right? It was just complex enough, but it wasn't overwhelming. And this is something you got to gauge for yourself, but with the players that I had, and especially with me being there and being able to explain through some of the rules interactions and give them appropriate reminders, it worked pretty well. Second, I used pre-built armies, right? So I did all the work up front to make the armies for them, and I tried to mirror them. So I'll run you through what I did with them. So for the Space Marine player, I gave him a captain, a lieutenant, 5-man squad of assault intercessors, 5-man squad of intercessors, and 5-man squad of hellblasters. And what this does, it's infantry focused. It's not too many models, right? And it gives him 5 assets to play the game with. 5 pieces he can move on the chessboard, and either do actions or advance, set up a charge, set up a base of fire. And I found that it was just enough within, when you look at a person's span of control, it's 3 to 5. And so this I found was a good number, and it turned out to be around 27 power level. It was exactly 27 power level and almost 600 points. And then for the Necron player, I gave him an Overlord, a Chronomancer, 2 10-man warrior squads, and a 1 Scorpec Destroyer squad. So kind of mirroring the Space Marine player. Again, he's got 5 assets. He's got 2 shooty assets, 1 close combat asset, and 2 support characters. And this really takes a lot of the brain power that you need to use in building lists out of the equation, right? You don't overwhelm a guy with, hey, here's all these range of models, like what do you want to take? Because at the end of the day, they're just going to ask you what's good. So, and when you build the lists, you can control and ensure that there's balance, right? Both of these lists are close to 600 points. They're the same power level. They have the same number of assets. They kind of perform similarly while having their own flavor. So I found that worked out really well for us, and it's something I would recommend doing. Number 3, slim down the rules. Just keep it to the datasheet. So I didn't use combat doctrines. I didn't use dynastic protocols. We didn't use chapter tactics. We didn't use the Necron version of chapter tactics. I forget what it's called. So we just kept it to the data sheets, and it worked out, right? There's enough special rules on the data sheets for these guys that you're able to play the game through. Next was use stratagems. Stratagems can be overwhelming, right? But when you take them out of the game, you lose a lot of that tactical flexibility, and I find it can become tedious or boring where you're literally just relying on the dice rolls to some extent, right? Obviously your movement is important, but in a very basic game like this, when the guys don't really know what they're doing, it can be tedious. So what I did was I allowed the core stratagems from the book, so the command point reroll, desperate breakout, all the ones in the book, and then I chose 3 stratagems from each of the books. And so from the Space Marine book, I chose Transhuman Physiology. It's probably going to be used every turn. Honor the Chapter, allow the Assault Intercessors to fight twice. And Rapid Fire, allowing his regular intercessors to shoot twice. And for the Necrons, chose Resurrection Protocols. So if he wants to bring back one of his characters that dies on a 4+, giving him a little bit of that risk aspect. Whirling Onslaught, so that he can get his Scorpec Destroyers actually up the field with that -1 to wound, and Relentless Onslaught, allowing the Gauss weapons to auto wound on 6s. It just gave them options, and I found that it gave the players more of a feeling of control without overwhelming them, right? Like, hey, here are these 3 stratagems. This is probably scenarios where you want to use them, scenarios when you probably don't want to use them. And finally, number 5, let them make mistakes, right? So you want to help, but not overwhelm them. So you don't want to play for these players. So I would say remind, don't dictate. So I would constantly remind them, hey, it's the start of your command phase. Who do you want to give your will be done to? Hey, you're doing your movement. Remember, your captain has a 6-inch reroll 1's aura. You're moving him kind of far away from there. Don't tell them, hey, you should put your captain here. Hey, you should move this guy here. Tell them, kind of friendly reminders, just so they're remembering those rules. Hey, you want your captain near your Hellblasters because if you have them overcharged, they're going to need that reroll 1 so they don't die. Things of that nature. And I found that it really worked out very well, and we had a great game. The guys loved it. We played 2 or 3 rounds, and they've both been players ever since. And I think when you give them a problem set that is both easy but challenging, right? Easy in that you're taking out all of the legwork from all the tedious parts of it, right? You're literally just be like, hey, here's your army, go into the game, roll some dice, I'm gonna help you out, and you're giving them enough options, but not too many. It worked out really well. So I hope this helps you guys introduce this hobby to some of your friends or coworkers or fellow soldiers. And if you guys have any suggestions for videos in the future, let me know. Remember, if you want to support the channel, there is a Amazon Associates link in the description below. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, this is Army Nerd. We are RTV time now.